Well, welcome everyone to this extended in-depth fireside chat with Gorilla Technologies. I'm your host, John Roy. I cover technology companies and water tower research. Today, I'm joined by Jay Chandon. He's the CEO of Gorilla, and by board member Thomas Sennheiser. I should mention that the company's safe harbor statements can be found on their website. Also, this fireside chat may not be reproduced or a written transcript distributed without the express written consent of Water Tower Research. Well, welcome. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's go right into the question. So, as an introduction, maybe you could give us an overview of the company and your markets.
Absolutely, John. First of all, thanks for having me. Gorilla is a London headquartered AI infrastructure and intelligence operator. Now, we're not a software vendor or a hardware reseller like most allude to. We're a full stack builder and operator of sovereign AI infrastructure. What does that mean? It means that we design, we build, and fund and operate all these AI data centers and help monetize them so that we can provide national intelligence security platforms on a long-term basis anchored by multi-year service agreements. Now, what do we offer? I mean, there are four markets we serve today: security and network intelligence. So things like sovereign surveillance, lawful interception, threat analytics, compliance platforms, which pin all of the or underpin the national security, cybersecurity requirements, and public safety. The second one is smart city platforms, AI-driven monitoring, traffic, environmental and safety platforms for both urban and national deployments. The third one is GPU as a service. These are high-density GPU infrastructure for governments, enterprise, and more importantly, research clients for delivering orchestration software, service levels, which they obviously would require at a guaranteed availability. And then finally, operations and managed services. So you think of it this way: once we secure the customer's contracts, we have long-term SLAs where we own, operate the infrastructure on behalf of the customers. That means we have to ensure uptime, we have to ensure security, we have to ensure compliance, and finally, scalability. What does that mean? It means that the different markets, so there's been a lot of questions about, what markets are you serving? So for me, the market segments will be divided again primarily into four different segments. Government and public agencies. Today, our more than 80% of our revenue is actually government and public agencies. So think about it this way: smart policing, tourism, smart city deployments, intelligence, national security. The second one is telecoms, telecom operators and utilities. So think about it this way: national backbones, AI-ready infrastructure that supports 5G. We just recently won a number of 5G projects as well, energy management and digital services. The third one is enterprises and financial institutions. So anybody who's looking for secure AI workloads, fraud detection, network intelligence, compliance, and so on. And finally, we do a lot of work in education and research. So national scale digital infrastructure, for example, smart education platforms, GPU access for universities and innovation centers. So that are the four primary segments we cover. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's great. I mean, you were talking about operations and then data centers. Maybe you could give us a little more color on this very large, $1.4 billion contract you did with Singapore. And I know you're building a few data centers for them, I think.
Yes. Yes, we are actually going to be building four across three different geographies, which is Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. When we signed the contract with Freyr, who's an NCP partner, by the way, we decided that we were going to build it in phases. We didn't want to take the big bang approach of going and deploying all $1.4 billion across three different countries. It just doesn't make sense. So what we did was we're taking the first phase of $300 million in Indonesia starting Q4 with optional extension. So these are 3-year contracts with optional extension. What are we doing? We're providing AI native infrastructure, which means we're providing GPU dense racks optimized with NVIDIA H200 class hardware, liquid cooled for sustained training workloads. Then we're providing low PUE workloads, basically below 1.25, critical for tropical environments. And this is very essential for the customer. We're providing sovereign ready orchestration, which means for workload scheduling, compliance, tenant level SLAs, We manage all of that. And finally, we're also providing them with edge integration, so linking national sites to very low latency workloads. We will have kicked off all the services by first quarter of 2026. But look at it this way, John. The market demand is far more significant. You said this was large, but we are actually going after even larger projects today. The market is there. There's a demand of more than 12 to 15 billion plus dollars today. And our alliance with FREYR is already pursuing more than $2.5 billion of opportunities within the Southeast Asia region alone. And what makes it very different is that we're not just building these facilities. We are owning, operating, and monetizing them through multi-year SLAs. So think about it this way, what makes us more than just a contractor.
So Thomas, can you give us a little more color on that?
Absolutely. We are just in the final statement of work, a little bit about details about the networking, all the smally creepy tasks we are doing, and also negotiating with our partners, the pricing so that we have an optimized price, which is fitting our calculation plus also our partner. And very soon, we will have that on the road with the first chunk, which is about 300 million. And we're already discussing, the next phases with the end customer. And there is much more to come, so just stay tuned.
So what about One Amazon? I mean, I know there was a lot of noise about that a little while ago. Tell us more. What's going on?
We've just gone through this whole last week with at the Climate Week. And what was exciting for us was we were able to showcase our entire profile through a launched staged activities during the September Climate Week. It was not just in ESG branding. What we are doing is that we took our flagship environmental intelligence platform and showed the world that we were actually now turning the Amazon's biome into structured, investable data. Till now, it was all about here building proof of concepts. You're signing the deals with Mato Grosso, for example, getting 1 million hectare commitment from them, getting the likes of IDB to work with you. This is a long process. We're talking about a 30-year project. So it took us a long time before we could actually get this. Now we've started to look at how we deploy our Gorilla AI stack to capture all of the biodiversity. So whether it's, all the biodiversity that exists within the Amazonian rainforest, the water, the soil, the climate signals across millions of hectares. So we're going to start with the first 1 million hectares and go across the board. The raw biome data, which we generate, is then processed in our natural infrastructure, which is basically to create the world's largest natural compound database. Now we're working, with the likes of Vicura, for example, based out of Singapore, where we're using our AI engines to analyze all of the biome compounds, the Amazonian biome compounds, for application in medicines and wellness. Now the model is a dual model. From infrastructure side, we're building the data capture layer. We're having the sensor. So we're working, we've got the sensors being deployed on the ground level. We've got the satellite mapping the topology. We've got the edge compute. And then what we're doing is it's flowing back to all of the Gorilla data centers, which we will be building within the regions. So we're building 9 data centers across each of the Amazonian countries. And we'll be building one in the United States, which will host all of the satellite data. So that's that's the first model. The second one is the intelligence model. So we're converting the natural capital into tradable, usable outputs. So basically, we're taking compound libraries for the biotech. We're taking environmental credit streams for finance, real-time monitoring of the governments, and making them tradable. That's a very unique thing which no one has ever done before. And this matters for us, and it matters for One Amazon. Why? Because it shows Gorilla's ability to take something so vast and so complex as a rainforest and turn it into a sovereign digital asset with real economic scientific value. And we're doing that in a region in Latin America. That's the most unique thing about it today.
So Thomas, One Amazon is huge. Can you give us some more details?
Yeah, I just came back from Climate Week in New York last week. And we had the chairman of the Environment Task Force from the White House, Ed Russo, who did the opening. We had a big announcement on SEC, the Security of Exchange Commission, who approved the digital token for One Amazon. There was a MOU signed with the IDB, the Inter-American Bank, and we did a demo of our sensor with a first POC we did for the first hectares. So things is in progress, but again, it's a huge project. It will take time, and we're looking forward to COP30, where we will have a little bit more demonstration and the first data, which we hopefully can then share with a bigger audience.
Interesting. So let's dig a little deeper.
Sure.
Let's talk about your vision and strategy. I mean, obviously there's a lot going on. How do you define and measure your success for Gorilla over the next 12 to 24 months?
Okay, that's a good question. We've told this before, and I think I want to reiterate this to the market again. We measure success in hard contracted terms. Okay, there's no fluff, there's no fake contracts. This is real. We've already covered over $1.4 billion, plus we won tens of millions of dollars in Southeast Asia on the 5G contracts as well. We are on track to close another further $1 billion by June 2026, which I promised. So this was completely, which we obviously didn't disclose to the market at that point of time until we signed the deals. But now the pipeline is even bigger than before. We've got now another $5+ billion of pipeline, apart from the 1.4 we've already covered and the 1 billion we've signed, and we will sign. Sorry, my apologies. Now, what are the metrics we measure ourselves? First of all, contracted backlog. I'm very proud to say that we have multi-year SLAs locked in converting our pipeline into signed agreements. Today, I can announce that we have over $85 million already locked in for 2026. By the way, this does not include the data center project of $1.4 billion, which has already been contracted. No, it does not. The second, we pride ourselves on execution speed. We go from the time we do our site selection to our first review, we are going, in less than 90 days. That's kind of unheard of as well. The third one is cash discipline. Cash conversion cycle is important. Accelerated collections is important. Debt reduction. We've gone from, as you know, 21 million of debt in the beginning of the year. Now we're under $16 million. So we're very fortunate, and we're very blessed to have done. Our CFO has done a phenomenal job. But more importantly, what the market also doesn't understand or realize is that we have $27 million of real estate asset, which is actually earmarked against the debt. So when I clear off the debt completely, I will still have additional capital reserves that will be adding to my kitty. And finally, operational readiness. We need to make sure that we're able to scale delivery teams. So what we have done is that we have hired a massive team in India. As you can see, we're hiring more than 150, 200 people as we speak. We will have about 70 people in Thailand by the end of next month, by the time we close our acquisitions. We will have about 150 plus people in Taiwan. We have more than 30 to 40 people in Egypt. And we're also accelerating some of our US acquisition as well. So it's not just about announcing contracts. We're making sure that we are revenue generating and building on our infrastructure as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of projects you were mentioning there. Are you getting any kind of reuse from one project to the next? Are there feeding to each other? Are there cross-selling opportunities?
Yes, there are cross-selling opportunities today. But what we are trying to do is that we're making sure that we're able to make our partnerships and our ecosystem much more stronger. Now, when I work with, so for example, if I'm working with government sectors, I'm making sure that I'm able to work on a particular project. So for example, the 5G LI. Now, that is a very, very important project for us. What we have done is that we have taken that particular project, we built on the customer's dime 4 years ago, successfully deployed it, The customer gave a raving review. We took that and implemented again for the same customer. So now we expanded our capability. Now we've gone and sold in other regions in the Southeast Asian market, as you've seen in the press announcement recently. We've got 2 new projects, and we're actively engaged in 2 more discussions in the Middle East who've come to us and said, we don't know of anybody who's done that. Can you please help us? So for us, this is not just building a product and selling it and deploying it once. We make it repeatable. And that's the mantra of Gorilla today.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about your financials and, capital, essentially. Can you break down your capital needs and your burn rate and funding needs over the next 12, 18 months?
Absolutely. First of all, we have raised $105 million recently. We haven't spent any of that. So we've only reduced debt further. We haven't used that money either. And our customers are paying. And this is an important fact, Roy. We have our customers paying us regularly now. Last quarter, they paid us. This quarter, they paid us. They're going to pay us again in a couple of weeks. So we are delivering and our customers are paying. That's one. Second, we have closed $1.4 billion of contracts, and we're targeting another, like I said, $1 billion+ by mid of 2026. The backlog itself generates payments, first of all. Secondly, we're not going to be dilutive. And I want to make this message very clear because we want to preserve shareholder value. So what we are doing is we're exploring very creative alternative sources of funding. So for example, we are already engaged in very active discussions on project level debt. We're doing vendor financing. We're working on export credit. We're working with sovereign funds. We're working with green infrastructure capital. And we're working on other partnerships where we believe that dilution is the last lever, not the first for us. Okay. And then finally, what we will also do is we will also use our scale. We were developing more into the US, and I'll talk a little more about it as we go through this discussion. The CNS CANS integration is helping us access local credits now. Now, we are also able to tap into targeted pools of capital without broad equity issuance as well. So think of us this way. We're prudent and capital efficient. Our burn is tightly managed and our project phased. We do not need heavy corporate level cash because our model funds the project at the SPV level and ties CapEx to contracted utilization. This keeps us, very lean on our working capital and avoids speculative build. And that's why, as someone quoted some time back, we have an office over a massage parlor or an hair salon. Doesn't really matter because it's London and we've got a very, very, very lean, efficient business to run.
So looking a little shorter term, over the next 6 to 12 months, what kind of milestones should investors be looking for or watching out for?
Ooh, that's a good one. Now, for the last, we have been focused on actively, building a pipeline, but reducing debt at the same time, right? But that does not mean we have missed the ball on how we expand. Now, the next 6 to 12 months, the first focus would be our Southeast Asia phase 1 mobilization. We've signed this large contract. We're not going to lose our eyeballs on that, and we're going to make sure we are focused. So, what would the investors watch? They would be looking for any of the NTP being issued, the procurement lots being awarded in Q4 of 2025, the first racks being powered and the GPUs landed. So that's our first thing. Our second would be we are very actively pursuing a potential acquisition in the United States. That will give us an integration of over 200 people to establish scale and an American footprint. So we believe that would come to some sort of a conclusion. Not closing, but that would take a long time, but at least to some sort of a logical conclusion. The third one would be Thailand. We're very actively focused on Thailand. So what would happen is we would we would have closed our CNS and CANS acquisition, and we would have, deepened our delivery capabilities in Thailand and the APAC region. I've also mandated my team and my head of strategy to close and look at a large facility in India. We're currently closing that as we speak. And I think we should be live in either October or November. That's for our existing facility. But that said, I've also mandated to look for an acquisition, and we're in conversations with about 3 or 4 businesses, which have about 1,000 to 2,000 people. And we're looking to acquire that as well. So investors should keep an eye out on that. Singapore, we'll be opening up our office. That will be more a sales office, having, take more with an anchor regional AI data center operations. For MENA, we are actually, 2 things that we're looking out for will be the milestones on the Egypt project, because now we're going into testing early next year, which means we'll complete a full deployment by the end of next year, which will be a year ahead in terms of completion. But at the same time, we'll also be looking at projects where I just told you about a couple of 5G LI projects, which we are looking at and talking to in the Middle East. Hopefully that comes to some sort of a logical conclusion over the next 6 to 12 months. LATAM, this is important. The One Amazon has actually opened up a lot of doors for us in the LATAM region, whether it's Panama, Mexico, Guyana, Brazil, Peru, Chile, and so on. We've got some very large projects coming out of Brazil, which we will be slowly or quickly announcing over the next 6 months, 6 to 12 again. And then finally, the revenue ramp. Now, I talked to you about the $85 million backlog, but I didn't talk to you about what the ramp up would be in terms of revenue. What we will do is we will provide guidance during our 3rd quarter results, so that we will let the market know exactly what that number looks like for 2026 and 2027. I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely. It does seem like you got a lot of things going on, a lot of balls in the air. You're juggling quite a number of things. Maybe we should talk about risk. So risk and execution risk. So what do you see are your biggest execution risks, and what are you doing to mitigate them?
That's a good one. I think I'll have about 4 or 5. Where we talked about, interesting you asked me that, because we just had a management session recently, and we talked about this and we discussed it at length, and we put some of them to rest right now. So biggest risk for me would be the GPU supply chain today. Global demand is outstripping availability. That's a big challenge. Long lead times for NVIDIA class GPUs. So that's going to be my first challenge.
I can sell you my 4090 that I've got sitting over here.
Sure. The second one would be power and readiness, cooling readiness. I'm sure you've seen that the high density workloads require reliable low PUE infrastructure in very hot climates. And as you see, we are very actively investing in very hot climates today. That's number 2. Sometimes there are delays in local permits and regulatory approvals. That becomes a bit of a hurdle. Sometimes there is sovereign compliance issues, like strict data localization that required, security requirements, different countries. Like if you look at Southeast Asia, no 2 regulations are alike. So we have to conform to each of the local regulations. Sometimes there are civil delays, vendor coordination, integration of IT, and so on. Geopolitical, and that's a big, big risk. In fact, I should put that first. The geopolitical exposure for us is a bit of a challenge because, for example, what happened in Thailand, right? The prime minister got fired, we got a new prime minister, lots of projects were put on hold. So people, I do believe sometimes, some of our investors just don't have the patience. They just don't understand the political risk we have to go through when you're looking at government projects. Listen, government projects are great for 2 reasons. Once they contract, they're in bed with you for the next 10, 15 years, and they pay regularly. But the biggest challenge is the political exposure, right? That's a kind of a big con. So things like regional instability, political shifts in emerging markets, FX volatility, those are some of the big execution risks. But we're also putting the mitigation strategies already in place, and we're making sure we have a team, by the way, a dedicated team to look after the mitigation of these risks.
So Thomas, any kind of view on execution risks from your position on the board?
Yeah, I think, for us on the board level, I think we have four risks we see in it. One is supply, of course, which is always a channel, power, people, and then we have the regulation, region, geopolitics, microeconomics around it. And I think, to mitigate all the risk on the supply side, we're working as a company very, very close with partners. We bring them early on board, as early as possible, and we really, believe in a strong relationship, which helps us also with the ecosystem, to get the supply under control. On the power side, we all have normally when we build data center, make sure that we have multiple contracts in place. We are very careful on the location. And again, a partner is a critical part to overcome this risk. On the people side, I think it's for everybody these days critical to find the right people, the right talent. And what we are doing as a company at Gorilla, we really want to attract the right people, the right talent. And I think we have a unique culture in our company, which makes it easy to work for us. And I think it's really a cool team. So we really emphasize that and making sure we attract the people around that. Regulation, geopolitical, we work with all the regulators, the different governance as tight as possible to reduce that risk. We have in multiple regions big projects. So if something happens in one region, it will not impact as big as, we're not depending on Asia only or on the European market. So that helps us, to do that. And also our pipeline is in all the different regions very, very strong. And with that, mitigation of the risk is much, much lower than maybe other companies have.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. I mean, you have a lot of public sector clients. Obviously, it's a large percentage of your current business and future. How are you really doing? So you had a team. Can you give us a little more color, particularly given the long procurement cycles?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge we have is localization and capability transfer. You go into these regions, like, for example, when we went to Egypt, we were completely gobsmacked by the local, by the requirements on the local side. Forget all the other complexities. HR is one of the biggest challenges. So what do? We invest local hiring. We build training and partnerships. So what did we do? We went into the universities in Egypt, hired them fresh off off the books, and said, now we're going to train you. We're doing the same thing in Thailand. We have CNS and CANS, for example, which we're acquiring. What we're doing is we're using them to go into the universities and hire locally so that we can build an R&D team. Now, the good news is that CNS and CANS actually has about 30 plus people in R&D. That's a good kind of a stepping stone, and we can, evolve from that particular stepping stone. Now, in India, we are looking at potential acquisition, but in the meanwhile, we're working very closely with the universities to make sure that there is, long-term control from the business side of it in terms of HR. The second one would be the regulatory and the compliance engagement. Now, our platforms are built for national data localization and making sure that lawful interception standards are met from the start. That means we have to go through every single pre-certification and local council requirements. It's not like, oh, I go to the country and I've done it. Every single part, like for example, working in Brazil, in one Amazon, Mato Grosso is completely different from Sao Paulo, completely different from Rio, right? We have localization and pre-certification requirements in each of these different places. So we have to make sure that we are aligned to any, to reduce any late stage regulatory risk. Then you have the geopolitical risk. We just talked about it. So what we do is we do country level SPVs so that we can have diversified vendor sourcing projects, which reassures the governments and that Gorilla can deliver even if the market shifts. So for example, when we're delivering GPUs, we make sure that it comes into the country, let's say, for example, in Southeast Asia, in the country, in an SPV, so that the delivery stays there and that Gorilla owns those GPUs on their books. And these, I think, these are maybe the 2 or 3, key alignments or interests we would like to align with public sector clients today.
So Thomas, from your experience, how is the best way to mitigate these long cycles that Jay is talking about in procurement?
Yeah, I think it's as Jay said, it's long and it's challenging. But what we are doing is we really working very local. So we have local people on the ground because we believe business is done locally and not on a regional or on a worldwide level. So that's why we have offices and engage with the local people. That helps us to drive the decision faster than as a global company.
Got it. So you've talked a little bit about GPUs and other data centers and things. I'm curious as to the competitive positioning. I mean, there are a lot of AI data centers out there in the world. How are yours different than traditional? How are you protecting your IP and your technology roadmap from the competitors?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Why? Because, see, again, the market just does not seem to get what we sometimes communicate. And I think I want to maybe spend a little bit of time and be very clear as to how we differentiate ourselves. What is our technology stack and how defensible is our IP, right? So the proprietary AI orchestration intelligence stack, which Gorilla has built, our platform integrates with all of the GPU scheduling, the multi-tenant security requirements, the telemetry, and billing at a sovereign level. Now, this allows governments and critical operators to run secure AI workloads in a way off-the-shelf data center software cannot match today. So that's kind of our first, IP. The second is the domain-specific know-how and certification. We have been in lawful interception for decades now. We've been in business for 25 years. Out of 20 years, we spent in lawful interception. We understand smart policing and national security deployment like nobody else, at least within the region today. So what does that mean? It means we have deep compliance, we have deep regulatory approvals, and we have kind of almost, firewalled any new entrants who cannot fast track into space. This requires a lot of trust from the customer. That's one side, but it also requires very deep compliance. So these go hand in hand, and it's very difficult for new entrants to come in. Impossible, in fact, for new entrants to come in. The third one, which I'm very, very passionate about, is our platform as a service, right? The end-to-end vertical integration, we own the entire stack today, whether it's video analytics, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's IoT, and whether it's cybersecurity. Each of them reinforces the other. So for example, the video intelligence feeds on smart city workloads, which require our data centers to operate and securitize the backbone. Now, the network, in this case, the effect looks and locks, actually. It looks and locks in the client and makes displacement very hard. Now, if you look at our average tenure with our customer today, it's over 14 years. Okay, so that's what I said. The network effect of this locks in the clients at any and makes it very difficult for us to be replaced or displaced today. And then finally, the sovereign relationships and all the embedded SLAs were built with the customer. See, once our systems are in place, it is very difficult to contractually get them out of system unless they want, we've screwed up on an epic proportion. Thank God to date, we haven't done that. That's all. Now, as we are tried contractually with the customer, we have to deploy and deliver critical KPIs for the customer pertaining to the local laws. That creates a lot of long-term stickiness, and it also has very high switching barriers. So these are the 4 or 5 things we have today, which makes us very defensible.
Excellent. So moving a little bit let's say adjacent, if you start thinking about your partnerships
Yeah.
and you're building an ecosystem, you've got partners with HPE and NVIDIA and ACOM. I mean, how are those really helping accelerate execution at this point?
Listen, we thrive because of our partners. We have partnerships with HP, NVIDIA, ACOM, Dell, EdgeCore, Supermicro, and so on and so forth. Now, our HPE partnership, it strengthens the credibility with the governments. It helps accelerate our product deployment. With the one with NVIDIA, for example, the alignment underpins the GPU supply and optimization. Now, regional partners such as Freyr, for example, which we signed with recently, helps us compress the time to market and localize the delivery and operations. Now, I'm sure you've seen already, John, NVIDIA actually helped us build and deploy an AI model which has never been tried and tested before. They helped the Zapara community during the One Amazon create the large language model which translates a near extinct language on the planet. There are only two people who speak the language. One's 99 years old. The other person is, I think, about 60. Okay. We managed to get the person to speak for about, I think, about 16 to 18 minutes, and were able to map his and translate it into English. So what have we done along with NVIDIA? We've been able to now preserve a language that would have been extinct. There were three people who spoke this language 4 months ago. God bless her soul. The chieftain's mother passed away. And there was a chieftain who actually came and said, how do I preserve my culture, my language, my identity? And if you see some of the photos recently, I was with the Zapara community at the Climate Week. We had invited them, and I was truly humbled. That's what partnerships bring, right? That's one. Second, I see these partnerships as backbones. Whether it's national operators, with utility companies, we work very closely with utility companies. We make sure that we work with engineering firms. We work where we have to partner with civil firms, for example, for bringing water and local licenses and so on and so forth. We don't do the work, but we have relationships and we have to work with them. So those are our JV or consortium partners. And finally, I think the customer validation side of it is very important for us. And we make sure that these partnerships will help enhance some of the customer validation, for example, for us.
So Thomas, with your little bit broader reach and experience, how are partnerships and ecosystems with these giant companies really helping Gorilla?
Yeah, I think leverage partner is super critical for us. And I think it's also important to bring them early on board. So we are really leaving partnership not only on paper, we really engage with them very, very early in every opportunity we have to make sure they are part of the process. And if you're also comfortable to work with us in a different opportunity. So it's a critical path to win and making sure also that we grow with them together. So it's a win-win situation for both. And I think that's really very, very critical also for our growth to make sure that we are scale as fast as we want. So just want to emphasize, partner and ecosystem are super critical and is part of our DNA to work with them in a real day-to-day business.
So speaking of partnerships, where are you looking for opportunities for more joint ventures and consortiums? Do you see any kind of things on the horizon, places to look for?
Oh, yeah. We are currently very well engaged in Southeast Asia, as you can imagine, rolling from our Indonesia into Malaysia into Thailand. So that's one. Closing CANs and CNS in Thailand will be amazing. United States, I just announced that we are actively pursuing a deal to acquire a company. John, this is fresh off, but that helps us position into large government contracts in the United States. Now, why? Because when we have a company which provides managed services and take a product company such as ours, you put them together, it's a match made in heaven. We can provide state level AI infrastructure, or we can provide education focused GPU services, does not matter what that is, or smart policing, or even our lawful interception programs. Our India, for example, we are going to be focused on our acquisition in India. That would be, like I said, about 1,000 to 2,000 people. That would be our capability center to anchor all of our edge AI, cybersecurity, and smart education workloads. So we are going to use that more predominantly as a customer success and an R&D center. So that will be our strategic regions or focus, and that'll be our key sectors where we're going to be putting our money to work.
So Thomas, on your radar, what are you looking to, or what directions do you think Drillage should really go into?
Yeah, I think, today our present with the offices we have in the US, in Europe, in Asia, we are very well, covered the different region. And we also have, projects in South America, Middle East. I mean, we have also an office in Egypt, which is Middle East, Africa, depending how you look on it. And I think we are very focused with customers. So I don't think we have very specifics we want to go for. I think we really want to grow with the customer we have, making sure, we deliver what we are committed. And then I think we have more than enough in our pipeline to achieve our forecast over the next couple of years.
Now, one of the things that investors often do is, look at customers for validation of business, the pricing, the delivery, et cetera. Can you share some concrete examples of a client that's used the Gorilla platform and maybe the impact?
Absolutely. I think I can give you a really good example of what I was reading today from one of the messages sent to me today. The 5G lawful interception platform. Now, a lot of people don't understand what we're actually building and doing there. Now, in APAC, Gorilla built and operates the first fully sovereign 5G LI backbone, which meets the strictest security and compliance standards while sustaining a 99.99% availability for critical law enforcement and intelligence agencies. And this is important because for them, this is literally their backbone. Now, what came out of that was the outcome and efficiency. It helped the agencies reduce time to insight from days previously to minutes, and cut the local cost of ownership by double digits versus in-house builds. So previously they had an in-house build, and it actually literally cut their total cost of ownership. So they were so very happy that they asked us to deploy the next phase of that as well. So which we got an extension from a 3, now we've gone to another 3-year contract. But what we've also done is that we have gained real-time compliance reporting for the customer, which they didn't have before. They were like, oh my God, can we get real-time reporting? Because sometimes you can imagine, right? Things go wrong. They need the reporting so that they can put it in front and say, look, we were compliant. And then finally, we also help them build new AI analytical workloads on a regular basis. We are the only team that sits inside the premise of the customer. That means we are sitting in between 3 of the top telecom. There are only 3 telecom agencies in Taiwan. We sit in between all of them, and what we do is we future-proof all of the new AI workloads that the customers asked us to build as well. Now that is a great example as to how we can take a product successfully deployed into one customer and then roll it out to 2 other new customers across the region. Now we've got suddenly 3 new customers for a product we only built 3 years ago, and we received tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Actually, it'll be quite a lot more than that. And by the time we close this, let's say by the end of 2026, we would have crossed a north of $120, $130 million of revenue just on this particular investment of ours. That, I think, is a big success for us.
So kind of following on with that, if you look at your outlook for growth beyond Singapore and One Amazon, certainly what you've talked about, what other strategic regions or sectors are really on your radar?
So today, as I mentioned, the US is a very key market for us. We are actively engaged in quite a number of discussions through our partners, Broadsat, ACOM, and so on and so forth in the United States. So the US will be the one key market we will be actively entering over the next 6 to 12 months. That would be both through an acquisition and potentially through an investment we will make as well. That is number one. We are going to heavily invest into the Asia region. We're seeing a lot of potential growth coming into this. So, for example, we talked about smart policing projects here. We talked about utilities and electricity projects here as well. And what we are doing is we're going to use our capability, which the newly built capability within the regions, and expand across the other regions. So, for example, from Thailand, we can expand very quickly into Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. From Malaysia, we've already got our expansion into Indonesia, but we will slowly be targeting Philippines and so on and so forth as well. And then finally, we'll be looking to expanding our horizons within the Taiwanese sector as well, where we're going to go from governments to enterprises. And as you know, we just signed a joint venture with a very well-known telecoms operator in Taiwan. That relationship is going to really kick off.
Excellent. So there's one area I wanted to talk about a little bit, in which is sustainability and ESG. How does that fit into your growth strategy?
To be honest with you, this is something we have been very passionate about, but we didn't find a very large project to kind of hone in our capabilities. But One Amazon brought that for us. For me, One Amazon is not branding, okay? It converts, as I said, it converts rainforest biome data into investable outputs such as natural compound databases for health, environmental credits for finance, and so on and so forth. But One Amazon will be the largest sustainability project ever done, period. If you listen to Rodrigo Veloso speak at the Climate Week last week, he said that they were looking to raise over $1 trillion for this particular initiative, and they believe that that is a possibility. And I've known Rodrigo for some time. When he puts his head to it, he will make it happen. So he's an absolutely phenomenal human being. The second for us is moving our AI data centers into green AI data centers. Now, designs with PUE below 1.25, renewable integration, and ESG monitoring as part of the SLA, we make sure that we're ensuring every workload is measured for impact. And that's something we're very, very, very passionate, and we're investing quite a bit on that. And then finally, if you look at our sustainability and ESG data monetization, for example, we have got a tourist safety project in Thailand. We're working with the Thai Tourist Police and the Royal Thai Police. So our data monetization is focused on the ESG, and we want to replicate that in LATAM to run our infrastructure, showing how sustainability can actually deliver and not only just be an add-on. Right? It's more like a core part of your function going forward. And that's what excites us today.
Well, that's great. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. We're running at the end of our time here. Jay, Thomas, I really appreciate you spending your time with me today at our fireside chat. So to learn more about Grrr, please visit their website, or you can look at our research on www.watertowerresearch.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much, John.
The views expressed in this fireside chat may not be necessarily reflect the views of Water Tower Research LLC and are provided for informational purposes only. This fireside chat may not be distributed or reproduced without the written consent of Water Tower Research. It should not be considered research nor recommendation. WTR is an investor engagement firm, not a licensed broker, broker-dealer, market maker, investment banker, underwriter, or investment advisor. Additional disclaimers can be found on watertowerresearch.com.